Hi y'all, it's Susanna. It's good to see y'all again. And I'm here to go on with the rest of this. D.I.D is obviously important to all of us. And so it's important for each of us to have a little bit of say with the history today. So I'm going to be going on from here. So we were talking about Mary Reynolds. And when she woke up after long sleep, she did not remember nothing. She had relearned everything. We're talking writing and calculating and reading. And evidently, her handwriting was completely different. Her personality was completely different. She was outgoing and funny and enjoyed people's company, when before she didn't like being around nobody hardly. She went from being real serious to being outgoing and fun. After 5 weeks passed, she fell asleep again. When she woke up, she were the prior self. Not that one that had been there. She were back to the serious, quiet, devout, religious, wanting to go off to herself person. This continued back and forth for 15 to 16 years. She'd have a long sleep, wake up, be a different person. Or as we know it, a different personality or alter. When she reached her mid-30s, well, the switching stopped. But here's the funny part of it. The original person that Mary Reynolds was is not who she remained. She remained the alter, the second personality. And she remained that for the rest of her days until she died at 61. In 1840, there were the case of Estelle Lahardy. That case were described by Dr. Charles Humbert Anton Despine. Despine, not Sparn. Despine. She was found to have paralysis and could not walk. She had extreme sensitivity to touch, too. She developed a second personality that could walk, could play. And this personality could not stand her mother's presence. Both personalities were extremely different in their personalities. Despine was supposedly able to fuse Estelle's two personalities back together, as well as doing the same for around 20 others. He was said to use animal magnetism of the nervous system to do this. Despine's work was found to be in disarray and fragmented, which led people to ponder if he might have some of the same problems that his patients had. Perhaps he too had dissociative identity disorder and weren't aware of it. We'll never know, but it's a possibility. His findings were taken from a monograph, and it was complicated for people to understand. So still to this day, with translations and figuring out, there are some discrepancies with theories and what one person thinks and what another does. I am part of the system, and nobody has ever asked my opinion. So I am gonna definitely get in on this today. My name is Ruby, so you can know me from here. In 1887, one Etienne Eugene Azam, a French professor of surgery, I think that is Bordeaux, France, that it says. So, anyway, I began hypnotizing a woman who displayed double consciousness. I guess she had two personalities, I'm guessing, since it's double consciousness. I would think that's what it is. Her case is really well known. Philida X is what it's under, so you can check that out if you're interested. It documented her case for over 35 years. Yeah. I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm bored. So somebody's gonna pause this and we are changing. This is stupid. So how do you do? It's Regina. Regina Wentworth. I greatly apologize for that travesty that just took place with Ruby. Ugh. Some people have no class. I will go on from here. So he documented her case for over 35 years. Philida X was born in 1843. Her childhood was difficult, not having a father in place. She exhibited 3 personalities. Each personality considered themselves to be the origin in the body, and the others to be the abnormals. So obviously, they did not get along. Some accounts say there were 2 personalities. So it depends on where you're looking. But either way, they were in conflict. The second personality manifested when she was only 13. When she was 15 is when she first saw Professor Azom. She was suffering from convulsions, considered to be hysterical, possibly insane. With these presumptions in mind, they missed a lot of her qualities, like being intelligent and rather industrious, which led Professor Azam to nickname her a serious type of character, a serious type of character. Each personality displayed different physical illnesses. One would have an issue with something and one would not. And that would be vice versa. Initially, her switches were documented every day. They would happen after a pain in the forehead and a long, deep sleep. She was said to be able to fall into these long, deep sleeps without doing hardly anything. Just by sitting down, she could fall into them. She would have these sleep states, sometimes 2 to 3 months at a time. Can you imagine how difficult that would be to constantly be falling asleep? Even more difficult when she would awaken. They would have switched constantly. The plus side that she had is that they would each remember the entire history and life of the body. That had to have at least made it somewhat easier. I give my leave, and I say ta. Hi, it's Mia. They let me come out to do this too. I'm so excited. So, we are working with the history of dissociative identity disorder. And boy, is it long. So, we're talking about fill with an X, is what I'm understanding. So, I'm going to pick up where Regina left off. By 1858, the so-called second personality was lasting 1 to 3 hours a day. As time went by, that got longer and longer. She lived a dual life, with the second personality becoming more dominant, lasting 2 to 3 days at a time. She began to experience one-way amnesia from this too. One-way amnesia means that A knows nothing about B, but B retains everything. So that is not fair to me. All of her treatments were done under hypnosis, and Azam coined it dual personality. After 9 to 10 years, in 1891, the second personality had once again diminished. That second personality was lasting only a few hours and was only coming out every 25 to 30 days at that point. Hello, this is Lara, and that was my cat Prim. I am here to do the next part of this history of dissociative identity disorder. During the late 19th century and early 20th century, French psychologist Pierre Janae became the primary theorist of dissociation. considering it as a form of hysteria, which is insulting, coined it multiple personality disorder or multiple personality at that time. He would go on to describe a number of multiple personality cases. These cases would include Leone, Rose, Lucy, Marie, and Marceline. In 1907, Jeanne would consider and describe Marceline as an extremely thin, bedridden woman. She couldn't eat or urinate regularly and normally. Jeanette performed hypnosis treatment, which helped. Through this, she regained her mobility and urinated regularly. There was only one problem that was encountered. This would only take place during a hypnotic trance state. Otherwise, the prior problems would revert back. When she was in this trance state, she could not recall, once she was out of it, anything that had happened. He had to regularly place her in this state for her to be able to eat. Otherwise, she would starve to death because literally she would not eat and had urination problems. And this was the only way that she was able to eat properly. When she was in this hypnotic trance-like state, she did not even behave exactly the same. One time during this particular hypnosis session, her parents came. When her parents came, they thought she was cured. So thinking she was all right and cured, they took her home, happy as can be. Not too long after, she relapsed. Concerned, of course, her parents brought her back to Jeanette. Jeanette had to, of course, do further treatment. This happened for 15 years. Her amnesia state became a serious problem over the years. With all these differences in mind, he declared her a dual personality, or what might be called a disordered state of divided consciousness. She too had one-way amnesia, much like Philida X. Moving on to the case of Leone, she appeared to have 3 or more personalities. One of these personalities being a child alter named Nichette, which happened to be a nickname she had when she was a child. With that in mind, my own personal question would be, was the child actually an alter, or was Nichette possibly the origin of the body? In the case of Lucy, she too had 3 personalities. One of her personalities was named Adrian and had childhood trauma flashbacks regularly when they were conscious. In the case of Rose, she suffered from a variety of sleep states, like sleepwalking, doing things in your sleep, or what they thought was her sleep, that you would not do when you were conscious or that particular person. within her personalities, changing personalities, one may be able to walk, another may be paralyzed. That would be a similar reference with her dissociative identity disorder, like Estelle Lahardy's was. Obviously, with dissociative identity disorder, each individual personality or alter, as we call them, can have different states of being, physically and mentally. That was Lara, and I am Valpray again. I am going to be ending the history of D.I.D. So from here we are going to 1906. In 1906, Dr. Morton Prince published the account of Christine Beauchamp. The case, called the dissociation of a personality, she had 3 personalities that had no knowledge of the others. So all 3 would experience amnesia and have no idea that the others existed. This account is one of the 3 best known in America. The other 2, one being Eve White, which the movie The 3 Faces of Eve was based from. And the third being Sybil Dorset, who experienced 16 separate personalities, 2 of which were males. Sybil's Sybil's DID was brought about due to a traumatic childhood with a psychotic mother, having undergone horrific abuse. In 1994, multiple personality disorder was renamed dissociative identity disorder in the American DSM-IV psychiatric manual. Statistics are not readily available due to the lack of research and the controversy still linked with the disorder. Today, the average number of personalities for an individual that has DID is 10. You can display anywhere from 2 all the way to 100 is the highest that's currently been documented. The current global population that is documented to have dissociative identity disorder is around 1.5 or less. That percentage is leaving it as a rare psychiatric disorder. Although those calculations may not be completely correct, we know for a fact that dissociative identity disorder, although it is documented all the way back to 10,000 BC through drawings, and for several centuries through documentation, journaling, and psychiatric work. It is a rare disorder that is very controversial. It is very interesting how it affects each individual person, host, body, whatever you wish to say, differently. And there may never be a complete explanation or a complete understanding of exactly what dissociative identity disorder is, other than it stemming from trauma, of course. It is a very complicated disorder. If you wish to further examine the history, it is very interesting as well as very insightful, especially for understanding if you have D.I.D and if you are in association with a friend or a family member that has dissociative identity disorder. The more that you know and the more that you understand, feel free to ask them questions. They want to be understood. We want to be understood. We want to understand each other. That's another reason for this particular blog. But in closing, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us and learning about some of the history of dissociative identity disorder. Today is D.I.D Awareness Day. Share that with others that you know. The more that we can get the word out and the information out, the more understanding there is, the easier it can be for those of us with dissociative identity disorder. I ask you to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can follow us on our journey with D.I.D. This has been the Notorious D.I.D. You have encountered many of us today. We do, however, have several others. This is Valpray. I am saying goodbye.